So welcome everybody. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're able to take part in this first workshop. Sandra, could you for just a minute put up the poll results slide?
Yes. So I have to stop sharing your slides then for a moment.
That's fine, go ahead.
So does everyone see
All
that?
right. Yes.
So we got a couple of answers. So already 16 RSEs. So we should explain what RSEs are for the two who are not sure. Yes, that looks great.
Actually, Ian will explain that as part of his talk. So you'll get the answer to that in a few minutes.
Yeah, I meant it will be, yes.
And for those of you that haven't taken part in the poll yet, we'll put the information back up for the next little bit and you can go ahead and answer. In the meantime, Ian, can you put up the slides again? All right, and then go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, well, thank you everybody for coming. Okay, yes. My name's Charles Ferenbaugh. I'm a computer scientist and software developer at Los Alamos National Laboratory, and I'm also on the steering committee of the US-RSE Association. And on behalf of everybody who's helped organize this, welcome to our virtual workshop. Next slide, please. So I wanted to say a little bit about how this workshop came about so that you'd know some of the history. We had been making plans for several months to hold an in-person workshop this week in Princeton, New Jersey. The intent of that was to do some community building, brainstorming, planning for the organization. And in early March, we had to make the decision to postpone that in-person workshop. The current plan now is to hold that in October instead, and we'll see what happens. Depending on circumstances, we may have to do something else, but that's the current plan. And in the meantime, we decided to do this virtual workshop as a replacement. So we had a rather short time frame to arrange it because of how quickly things came up. And we had to do a little bit of adapting. The original format we were going to do for the in-person workshop depended very heavily on in-person interaction. That wasn't going to work in this context, so we've had to adapt the format a little bit to do something that will work in this virtual setting. So hopefully we've come up with something that will be interesting and useful to you. And since most of us have never done a virtual workshop like this before, there are likely to be some rough edges as we go along. So please be patient with us. Next slide, please. I'd like to say a quick thank you to all the people who have helped put this together. We've had a planning committee that's been working busily in Slack the past couple of weeks, putting together the schedule and the speaker list and deciding on how to do things. So that has been a great help. Thanks to everybody who's been doing that. Thanks to our speakers who agreed to speak on kind of short notice. We're very appreciative of that. Thank you to our session leaders, and thank you to all of you participants for making the time to be a part of this, again, on fairly short notice. So thank you for that. Next slide. So the goals of this workshop are we're looking to build community among RSEs and allies of RSEs. That's allies is kind of a word we've been using to describe people who aren't RSEs but are supportive of what RSEs are doing and want to help. Another goal is to share information to the wider community on what kinds of things RSEs are doing. in their various institutions. And we also want to help develop future plans for the US-RSE Association. We, the steering committee, are making plans for what we want to go, and we very much want this to be a community-driven organization. So we're very much interested in what you all would like to see happen. And hopefully a lot of that will come out in the discussions as the workshop goes on. And let me say a special word. I know from the registration that we've got several participants from Canada, from the UK, from other parts of Europe. So we welcome you also. And even though we're focusing in this workshop on US-RSE, we hope that the things that we talk about here will be interesting and useful to you as well. We'd like to hear what you all are doing in your countries if you want to join into the discussion, and maybe take back some ideas to where you are working as well. So with that, next slide. So the agenda for the entire workshop, we have 3 sessions. The session we're doing right now, the RSE Landscape. We'll have a session later today with technical talks about RSE projects, and then a session tomorrow that will be a discussion and breakout sessions to talk about next steps for the US-RSE Association. And then next slide. For this particular session, the agenda is, after the short overview that I'm giving, we're going to have 4 presentations from Ian Cosden is going to speak on US-RSE in general, and then we'll have 3 other speakers speaking on what things that are happening at their particular institutions. And after that, we will have a panel discussion that we will take questions in the Zoom chat window, and I will moderate the discussion and pose them to our panelists. And with that, I think we're just about ready to go. Sandra, could you show us the poll results one more time before we launch into the talks?
Of course. Here we go.
All right, we have quite a few.
Like a lot of RSEs.
That's not too surprising, actually. We have people who work with RSEs in various ways. We have a couple of people who aren't sure what RSE means, and I think Ian will answer that in his talk. And so with that, I think we'll go on to the talks, and we'll show the poll results one more time as other people are coming in. But let me turn things over now to Ian Cosden, who's the chair of our steering committee, and he will speak on US-RSE past, present, and future.
Thanks, Charles. All right, hang on, let me get this set up. Yeah, really, thanks, Charles. You know, this came together. I'll be honest, I was one of the skeptical people who thought there's no way we're going to be able to pull this off in a few weeks. And yet somehow here we are, and we've got 70 people, which is super exciting. So thanks for all you've done to pull this together. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on where you are. So my name's Ian. As Charles said, I'm the current chair of the very first US-RSE steering committee. In my day job, I'm the director of research software engineering for computational data science at Princeton, which we can talk about later if it's of interest. But really, I want to focus on what we're doing as an organization. I realize that for many of you, this is likely the first US-RSE event, largely because it's the first real event we've done that isn't tacked on to something else. So I want to take a few minutes to give a high-level overview of the organization, you know, what we're trying to accomplish, where we've been, and some of the events on the horizon, both kind of in the near term and the far term. So with that, so we really view this as a community-driven organization. It started as a pretty grassroots thing, and you know, I've got people underlined here because that's really what we're focused on. This isn't I don't care where you're from universities, labs, knowledge institutes, companies, large industry, small industry. That's not as important as it is focused on the people. This isn't an institutional thing. This is really driven by folks who are doing this kind of work, who relate to this kind of work. We really want to think of this as humans. So a couple of you didn't necessarily know what RSE meant. And, you know, I actually debated whether we should even put this up. This is an organizational definition that we're using. And I was thinking I would just read it out to you as we go, but rather I think I'll put it up here. And then while you're reading it, I'll say, I don't think there's been anything that within this community has generated more debate than this definition. And I think that's slightly missing the point as to exactly what it is and why we have a definition. You know, nobody's going to have a one-size-fits-all definition. People do this as part of their job, as all of their job, as a small fraction. People aspire to do more of this kind of work. As Charles said, we have RSE allies who think this work is important and want to see it grow and succeed in the research software community. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be an RSE to be included in this association or to participate actively, really. So we really do want to emphasize that it's inclusive, that we're thinking of RSEs as people who are using programming to advance research in some way. And I think we can debate this a lot, and I think we can, but let's not focus on our differences, more focus on what we have in common. So with that, you know, at a really high level, what we're trying to accomplish here as first step is really three things. So the first is community, and it's this idea of creating a professional association of people to share knowledge, connect with each other, share resources. You know, a lot of times we hear stories that RSEs are sort of on their own. They're the only one in a lab or the only one in an organization, and this can provide an opportunity to connect with peers, to share things, or really just have a sense of belonging. Second is advocacy. So we want to promote the impact that RSEs are having on research. We certainly believe that RSEs have a really important and growing, this is increasingly important role to research that RSEs serve. So if we're not going to advocate for ourselves, who is? So that's one of the second one. And finally, providing resources. So this is stuff to help people do their job better, to help people grow their career. So perhaps it's even to support individuals who are looking to establish an RSE group. We can be a central resource for all things research software engineers, to help this community, to help career development and advancement. So where do we come from? I think probably many of you know that the term RSE, the movement of bringing together RSEs from various institutions, really started in the UK. So in 2012, the SSI had a collaborations workshop where a small working group coined the term research software engineer, and it's kind of stuck ever since. In late 2013, they set up their association with around 50 members. I believe now their Slack channel has on the order of 2,000. They have evolved it now into a dues-driven membership society for research software engineering, and that's all in the last 7 years. So where we came in, really there were two almost simultaneous events that really spawned the US-RSE. So there was a survey that Dan Katz and Sandra Gessing kind of brought to this country to just get a feel for what kind of RSEs were out there. Out of the, say, 175 responses, which I think if we redid this survey, we'd get a lot more now. About 12 responded to a question that said, would you be interested in setting up a national community of research software engineers? At virtually the same time, within days of that survey, there was a first international RSE leaders meeting where there were 5 US, maybe delegates, 5 US-based participants in that. And that was at the end of January, and we decided, okay, we need to have something like this. there are a lot of good things coming out of the UK Association that we need something like that in this country. So I believe Chris maybe even set up the Slack at that meeting. The US-RSE Slack workspace was born. The first website went live, and really it was pretty slow at first in 2018 of establishing those high-level goals, setting up a steering committee to oversee and kind of help with really growing this community. So here's a plot of membership. Membership is pretty loosely defined here as you've joined the mailing list. You've clicked that join link, which I'll show at the end if you haven't done that. It's grown rather substantially over 2019. For 2018, it was mostly a few of us sitting around saying, here are the things we need to do, and it's taken off since then. So we've seen a lot of growth, both just in membership but in activity. So we've redone the website. We got an official logo. It was a very, at the time, membership-wide vote on Slack, which was not a large membership, but a membership nevertheless. We've got a Twitter account now. We're sending out newsletters. So actually, newsletters is a good way to know if you are a member. If you're getting those newsletters, you are officially a member. If you're not getting those newsletters, go to the website, click join, and you'll be added to the list. If you're not sure, do it again. Christina might be mad at me, but duplicates are okay. We have a way to deal with them. We have an official code of conduct, so hopefully everyone's seen that. This event certainly is under that. I think we've put on a couple events organized by us. We've co-located at PERC and SC, so we've had workshops and BOFs, panels, and as Charles mentioned, we were successful in obtaining funding from the Sloan Foundation to do an in-person workshop. It was supposed to be today. Unfortunately, it's now been postponed to October. But that really does show that we're gaining some momentum, and funding agencies starting to recognize that this is a thing and we should support the activity. And we've spawned new activities. So I don't know if Vanessa's on the call. You might know her as V on Slack, has put together a syndicated blog. So if you have a blog that you write about RSE related stuff, you can get it syndicated through the community blog. And RSE Stories is just a great initiative of interviewing. Vanessa does this podcast. She interviews people who are in RSE type roles, and it's a great way to get to know kind of the work that people are doing. So where we're going from here, so in the short term, we've had our first virtual event, hooray. We have just found out that the PERC conference will be done virtual. We had a workshop accepted there to bring RSEs together and do more discussion and community building. We mentioned we have this community planning workshop coming up in October. At SC, we have a workshop that's been accepted there too. And we're really looking to expand our online events. Got them here as community calls, but this could be perhaps domain specific or tool specific or programming language specific, to be determined, but really trying to connect on a technical level, people doing this kind of work. And at the organizational perspective, the steering committee is working hard to set up a governance and election procedure to ensure that this can grow into the future, and setting up a framework really for the long run. Beyond that, so here are some, I'll call them envision plans, some things that are penciled in on the roadmap for where we'd like to see this go. The UK has been doing it for a few years, but having some kind of annual RSE conference or workshops, who's going to be the first one to do hashtag US-RSECon 2023? It's a bit ambitious, but why not? Let's shoot for it as a chance to really share the work that we're doing. So this afternoon might be a bit of a preview for what that could look like. And as you can see here from the map, so these are people who have signed up for the mailing list. There might be some benefit to doing something regionally or locally. There are hotspots throughout the country where we could do something like that. We mentioned it earlier, one of the main goals of this organization is to advocate for RSEs. So coming up with some kind of advocacy program that promotes RSEs, perhaps it's the funding agencies, the institutions and organizations to really highlight the role. A big part is career development. So can we come up with some kind of mentorship program that in the long run that really helps feed the career of RSEs, help people get into this career path, and then hopefully achieve some kind of nonprofit status to allow us to grow beyond. So where we go really depends on two key things. The first is we need ideas. We need to know what the community wants. We want to hear it. We want to build this for the community, for the people that are doing this kind of work. So what should we be doing? What do we need to do? And the second is, you know, if it's worthwhile, we want people to be involved, and as much involved as you have. So tomorrow's session is really about kind of defining these things. So we're really looking forward to hearing, what do you want US-RSE to be? What's US-RSE going to do that's going to benefit your life, your career, the work that you do? What should we be doing? What are the right things? So please put on your brainstorming hats tomorrow and think about, you know, what would a national organization do that you would say, hey, that's making my life better, that's improving my career. And how we get there is you. Really, maybe instead of you, it should be all of us. You know, we're in this together, and the more that we can help each other, the better we're all going to be. So I figure we're the US, I can use Uncle Sam pointing semi-aggressively to say, well, please get involved. Every little bit counts, even if it's just sharing ideas for what would be useful. You know, an idea, this started as an idea and it snowballed into something more. So I don't want to end my talk without thanking the other 8 individuals who are on the steering committee. I don't know how many people know this, but these are folks who are putting in hours and hours on a regular basis. They're completely volunteer. They're getting next to no credit and really working hard to make this something kind of bigger than anybody. So Jeff, Charles, Sandra, Chris, Dan, Christina, Lance, and Jordan, you know, we really wouldn't be here without them. So if you see them or know them or have a chance to just say a thank you, they really have put in a lot of effort. You can get a hold of the steering committee with this contact at usrse.org or on our Slack workspace. If you just tag @SC, we'll all get notified and can answer questions or help out if something's going on. They're not the only ones. Obviously, we got to thank the UK, the German, and there are a bunch of other societies that are in this too, and they've been such great partners in letting us bounce ideas off of them, in supporting. It really is a global community. So thanks to them. Thanks to everybody who's done everything, whether it's updating the website, whether it's you know, just answering questions within the discussion, introducing yourself. That all lends itself to really growing our community. So if you haven't joined, there's no pressure. You're going to get a newsletter once every other month. That's pretty much the extent of it. It'll populate that map, but that's how we can stay in contact. Encourage you to come join the Slack, introduce yourself, what kind of work you're doing, what you're interested in chatting about, and we'll all go from there. So with that, I don't know, Charles, maybe I can pass it back over to you. I will certainly be hanging around for the panel discussion for any and all questions.
Okay. Thank you, Ian. Let me just reiterate.
Sorry, there was one question in the chat to me, whether the slides will be shared. You will share the slides.
I am more than happy to share my slides. I'm not quite sure the best way to do that yet, but we'll figure something out. At the minimum, I could just post them on Slack. I don't know about the other presenters. You know, we'll kind of maybe we'll sort that out afterwards.
Okay. Sandra, could you put up the poll one more time, since hopefully more people have had a chance to respond now? And as she's doing that, I'll reiterate for those who have just come in that we are collecting questions to ask as part of the panel discussion. If a question occurs to you as we're going along, please post it in the Slack channel, and we will ask those after the talk section is over. All right, so we have quite a few RSEs answering our poll, various people having done other things, various people who have other connections to RSEs, so that's great. Whichever kind of dot represents you, we're glad you're here. And I will now turn it over at this point to our next speaker, who is Mahmood Shad of Harvard. And let's.
Let me share my screen.
All right, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going over research software engineering activities and our group at Harvard University. Similar to many other schools, we had software engineers in different labs contributing to projects, but we had this issue of when they leave the school, it's hard to maintain those software packages. And we had this discussion of creating a RSE team and to answer researcher needs for research software engineering. So I'll go over the job family, RSE job family at Harvard, RSE services and or relation with research computing, funding and working model, proposed team structure, and at the end, I'll go over our hiring strategy for RSEs and a few RSE projects. So before we had all software engineers, research software engineers as a part of IT job family. But now we have university-wide implementation of research computing job family in 3 different categories. As you can see, system, researcher, and software and data facing. And each one comes with 5 different levels for their career path. And similar career paths for the management in each category. And research software engineering belongs to software and data facing with different levels, and different levels, they just different based on their responsibility, their contribution to the project. And recently we had RSE and senior RSE classified under this job families. So we can hire people with RSE and senior RSE as their official title at Harvard. And the job family explains details about their activity and the demand that we have from them. So in terms of services we offer, we divide them in 4 categories: scientific software packages and data services. So we design, develop, optimize software packages, add new features. We do code refactoring, maintenance of the software packages, and we also do system design for RSE projects. And it could be part of the whole project. In terms of architecture, database, VM, file system networking, and services and component, information security if the data belongs to a different security level or it has to comply with federal security requirement, for example, FISMA. We do consultation on software and data services. We have people with domain-specific knowledge. We have people from biochemistry, biophysics, fluid dynamics, and we offer domain-specific consultation on research software engineering. And we also work with faculties on joint grant to cover the cost of RSEs in the project. We also have training on software development, HPC, numerical simulation, and using machine learning or deep learning tools on the HPC cluster. So we are part of research computing, FAS research computing, and I would say this is a very sweet spot for research software engineering because we have the opportunity to work with different teams, because as a part of different software development project, we need to build software and hardware infrastructure for the project. So we have opportunity to work with system professionals from operation team, from software infrastructure, and from research facilitation. So I would call all of them RSE because they all contribute to the projects. In terms of funding and working model, we have different funding sources, but currently we mostly depend on PI grants, and we are also working with few faculties for a joint PI grant to cover RSE FTEs, the cost of the RSE. At the school, we have school-funded position, but we expect as we engage more with researchers and show a successful track record of projects, we can ask for more school-funded positions. And since we are not there yet, we have limited resources to offer free RSE services. If a project led to a funded project, we spend more time. But currently, the model is we have dedicated RSEs on PI grants. So if you read the paper by Daniel Katz and others on story of research software engineering on 3 different schools, one of the model offered was this matrix management structure. So as we are hiring more RSEs in the team, we would like to move from our current working model to the ideal model, which has a matrix management structure. So different projects come and we distribute between 2 or 3 RSE based on the requirement backend or front end. This solves the issue of having just one person working on one project, and if that person leaves, it's hard to maintain the package. And this slide shows proposed team structures, and these are the skills that over the time we would like to add to our team. And this black bar indicates the priority in filling this position. We have front-end requirement, making a UI or GUI in almost all projects. Scientific software developer, someone with domain-specific knowledge and expert on scientific programming. Professional software developer just to have a reference, someone with industry background, so can comment on the codes that researchers develop. And database visualization, HPC, and big data and machine learning application. But after several discussions, we decided to build a team. It doesn't have to be individuals for each skill, so one person can have several of these skills in the team. So for the hiring, we have several software developers at Harvard in different labs working. So if there is a qualified applicant, we prefer to reach out to them. As you know, it's hard to hire professional software developers outside university because of the competitive market to hire software developers. For the interns, we look for CS undergrads, or we use Handshake website. You can post a job to local schools, and we also post to job boards, and thanks to US-RSE communication channels, website and Slack. And we keep a pool of previous applicants, and in case for a new job they qualify, we can reach out to them. So these are a few RSE projects we work with, and we are working with different centers and departments. We work with Center for Brain Science to develop 2 major software. One is for operant conditioning software to train animals, and Sarah from our team will present about that in the afternoon session. We are working on a spike sorting of neural recordings. And from the School of Public Health, we are creating a secure data platform so the researchers can share data and access data for different projects. And we are also refactoring 2 R packages and applying for an NIH grant. We are receiving an NIH grant to support the efforts of those RSEs. So the projects cover a wide spectrum of skills and also the fields in the school. And at the end, I would like to thank my colleagues at Research Computing to help in research software engineering projects. And it was very helpful, and without their help, it was impossible. Thank you, everyone. I would be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Mahmood. And as I've said before, if you do have questions, please put them in the chat, and we will use those as part of the panel discussion that's coming up.
Sure.
Our next speaker is Christina Maimone from Northwestern University. So I think let's get Christina up.
There we go.
All right, there we go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. As he said, Christina Maimone, and I am also with the Research Computing Group, but at Northwestern. I'm going to talk about the centralized services we're working on for the university. We're at a much earlier stage than what we just heard about at Harvard, so my perspective is sort of at that of how are we trying to form something with pretty limited resources at the moment. I will say there's many RSEs working at Northwestern and research labs and departments and cores, and I don't know most of them, so I'm just sharing the particular perspective of what we're doing to create a service that's generally available to researchers. So I want to start with a little history, because one of the questions we've struggled with at Northwestern, and I've heard from others, is how you can build a research software engineering team when there's kind of no money and you can't get new staff positions approved. This has been a big consideration for us, so I think it's important to discuss how we put something together. I work as part of the Research Computing Services team, which is part of the central IT group at the university. So we support researchers from all of the schools. 4 years ago, when I came to Northwestern, the Research Computing group did two things. They sort of supported the HPC cluster, and then they had some visualization specialists who focused on sort of high-end computationally intensive projects. And shortly before I came, the team got a new manager, and as she was asking researchers what they needed help with, she was getting requests for things that the team didn't support. So archiving websites, setting up databases, visualizing small data sets, writing software, working with their data. So they took a position that was supporting a small social science HPC cluster, sort of as a system admin, and morphed that into my initial position, which was providing computational social science support. Then, as we were planning how to develop and further support services outside of HPC in our group, we generalized computational social science support to data science, visualization, programming support across all different fields, sort of lumped together most of the things that aren't HPC focused in our group. So at this point, about half of our group does HPC support and half does these other things that are sort of broadly united by writing code and working with data. That's a lot of things to support, and we have a small team. There's me, I'm on the data scientist side of things. I do write software when I need to. I'm kind of a generalist. My background is in social science. Then we had one of these visualization specialist positions, and when the person in that position left, we reposted it as a data visualization specialist to bring in somebody focused on supporting sort of routine visualization with smaller data sets, both static and interactive, but making scatter plots and bar charts and some of the things that are more routine for researchers. This position actually worked really well, but then that person also left the university, and due to some budget issues, we dropped visualization support as sort of a separate service. So then we morphed that position into a general data scientist position. And we were lucky enough to actually hire one of our students. So I had, Colby there was one of our student consultants, and she's now full-time staff, and she is a biologist by training. The third member of our team is a software developer. He came from a different IT group that was reorganized. He had a research software project going on though, so they had him join our team. So we do have a developer now. And then we also frequently pull in another member of research computing whose job is as a cloud computing specialist, but background is as a web developer. And so his skill set is very useful on a lot of our projects. To supplement our staff, we have graduate student consultants. So we have 3 graduate students who are on sort of full-time graduate assistantships that are funded through the university. Instead of being a teaching assistant or research assistant, they work with us. And that's been really great to have people with dedicated hours. And then we also have a handful of other graduate students who work for us hourly as needed and as their schedules allow. So they still have other responsibilities. So we usually just ask them to do a couple hours here and there. All right, so what can we do with the resources that we have now? Our approach is to offer help with anything. We don't really have enough people to differentiate separate services for each of the areas we support. So to separate, data science and statistical consulting and research software and data visualization, kind of just lump everything together and say, hey, ask us any questions and we'll see what we can do to help. There are things we can't help with, but knowing about what the needs are that are out there and what people would like us to help with helps us demonstrate demand to the university. For example, we help people use statistical software, but we provide very limited help with choosing statistical models. So we keep track of the requests we get to do this so that we can build support for getting more positions in the future. Keeping these records has been really important for us. With the limited staff we have, we're also focusing more on short-term engagements instead of longer-term projects so that we can reach more people and sort of help build up interest in and support for the service overall. So we think of our services in 3 areas. The first is short consults. These can be from a few minutes to a few hours. We let people schedule these ahead of time online, and we also, at least before the last month or so, had drop-in hours each week in the libraries where people could just stop by and ask questions. Our student consultants handle most of these requests, but we do have staff usually respond to faculty consult requests. A few examples of the incoming consult requests related to research software are on the slide. It seems like helping somebody with installing a Python or R package is kind of far removed from building better research software, but we really find it's a very foundational thing that can make a huge difference for researchers. There really wasn't anyone else at the university that people could ask for this type of help. Their local IT folks who did desktop support really didn't know enough about the packages to troubleshoot these issues. It wasn't something that we were offering otherwise in IT, and so we're at least one place people could drop in and get some help with something that's a big issue for people. I think that that's really a first step in helping people use research software and help them write better software. We do also help with code as well, and those consults are obviously a bit more interesting than installing packages. The second service we offer is training. We provide access to some online resources, but we also have a lot of free workshops that are open to everyone. These were all in person before the last month. Now we're moving to remote teaching. We have full workshop sequences in a few languages, and then we add special topics depending on what our staff and our student consultants want to teach, what people ask us for. So last year we provided over 5,000 people hours of training in the last academic year. So a good amount of skill development getting out to our community. Third service we do offer is direct support for faculty projects. This is where we get to do the RSE work ourselves. We can't take on very many projects at a time with the staff we have, so we prioritize projects that have funding, and then we take on other projects as we have capacity. We end up at the moment with the staff we have currently supporting mostly social science and humanities researchers, but we're open to working with folks in every field. Okay, so where do we want to go? We are constantly building a case for why we need additional staff. So to do that, we are undertaking a needs assessment. So we've had focus groups with researchers, so that's from students through faculty, to talk about what kind of services they need and what the challenges they're facing in the research are. And then we're doing research of what our peer institutions are offering in different service areas. So research software engineering support, statistical consulting, data visualization, data science, data management, a lot of things that fall under this big umbrella of coding and data. We also are keeping track of who we help and what requests we get that we can't fulfill. And we're working on ways to demonstrate impact more effectively, because often we'll help somebody very early on in a project, and the publication that results from it may not come for years down the road when they're at a different institution. So working on how to capture that impact a little bit more effectively. And then we're building allies at the university, working on these relationships with key faculty members and administrators who can help us make the case for additional staff and resources when they become available. Where I'd like to get to with our research software support is to have at least 3 RSEs on staff who are focused on project work. I think this is the minimum number we would need to reliably offer that project support service in a sustainable way. I mean, I'd love to have more, but sort of saying if you want to have the service, we need 3 people. And I'd like to have a balance of grant funded and unfunded projects because we see a lot of needs in social science and humanities that don't necessarily have opportunities for grant funding. We've also been exploring the possibility of being a home for RSEs at the university who are dedicated to a single project so that those folks would have colleagues and some professional and career development support, a manager, similar services that they're sort of not getting as individual RSEs in a lab. Short of doing this formally, we're hoping to identify more of the RSEs at the university and start supporting connections between them. With our training, we're working on ways to support researchers in taking the skills they learn in workshops and translating those into their research, actually acting on what they learn in the workshops. So we're trying to offer a program this summer where we'll help people figure out what workshops they need to take over the summer. We offer a lot of our workshops during the summer, and then bring people together sort of at the end of the summer for a work week where we provide a lot of one-on-one support for them. Also like to teach more intermediate and advanced software skill workshops beyond the introductory ones that we offer. All right, so I'm happy again in the panel to talk about any of this or anything else that comes up related to this.
All right, thank you very much, Christina. And our last speaker before we go to the panel section of our talk is Nuyun Zhang from Georgia Tech. And do we have screen sharing for you? Yes, there we go.
Okay, I hope everybody can see the screen now. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to introduce our team at Georgia Tech. Let me start sharing. Okay, so we have 4 team members in today's talk. If you have any questions, you don't have to wait till the end. Just type it in the chat box and we'll be able to help you. My name is Nuyun Zhang. I go by Nellie. I work in the PACE Georgia Tech's team. So today, first, I'm going to introduce our group to you, what is PACE and what is our organization model, and that defines our job responsibility. Roughly, our job responsibility can be divided into 5 categories: grant, software management, benchmark data analytics, user support, and user training. This certainly won't cover all the work we do, but hopefully this can give you an idea of the daily work of our RSEs in PACE group. So first, what is PACE? It has 2 meanings. The first is our organization's name, Partnership for an Advanced Computing Environment. Second, it is our cluster's name, PACE Cluster. We support 2,000 active users with the resources listed in the slides. We are a group under the Office of IT, under the Administration and Finance of Georgia Tech. In PACE, we have 2 branches. One is a cyber infrastructure facilitation, who take care of the hardware, the compute node, the storage, the network, and ensures the health running of the system and the security of the system. Another branch is the research facilitation branch. The manager is Mahmood, Belgian, who is a good example of what the career path could be for a research software engineer. Under this branch, there are 3 teams: customer experience, outreach and faculty interaction, and software and collaboration support. So in our software team, there are 4 members. We are all categorized as research software engineer. We have Christina, Cherry, Kevin, and myself. The first category of our job responsibility is grant, though it's not the first priority as we are hard-moneyed and working in an IT organization, but it's worth mentioning as we like to contribute to the community and make broader impact through the grants. We develop grants ourselves. For example, we lead the 2019 NSF grant CC STAR, that is to integrate the Georgia Tech's resource with the Open Science Grade to support the science. The PI is Dr. Belgian. Another example is that we implement the NSF MRI grant, which is purchase a lot of computing and storage resources to support data-driven science in Georgia Tech. We also participate in other NSF grants application like the cloud access, tripods, and cyber training. The second category of work I like to talk is about software management, which is the most important one at the current stage of our software team. So the previous slides showed that we have a huge cluster and we support 300 software applications. The number may seem not too big, but considering that the software needs to be built on top of different architectures, compilers, and MPIs, and all of them have different versions, the combination of software is a lot. And change in system hardware and software aging is a problem, so we have to recompile them very often. And each software needed by PACE end users is another challenge for us too. So the software build and the configuration is time-consuming, complicated, and error-prone. How do we solve this problem in PACE? First, we have good news that we're expansion into a new data center in the Tech Square Midtown area of Atlanta. That gives us the opportunity to have one single adaptable software repository. We have heterogeneous architecture in the past, but now we will have all Intel Cascade Lake as our architecture, and we can have one repository built on Red Hat 7, while in the past we have 6 and 7. And the second opportunity for us is we analyze our jobs and identify the common use softwares and categorize them into 3 tiers. So for the first tier, we just give them full support, including building all the softwares, test them, providing document and support them. For the third layers, user will build and manage and support them by themselves. And we have our PACE software management solutions in terms of GitLab or Git as version control, LMOD as our module hierarchy and meta model way to manage all the modules, spec and manual software installation and manage way to manage all the packages, and reframe as our regression testing framework. So this technical sessions in the afternoon, Kevin and Chris Stone presented will cover the details of the software management part. It will be very interesting. And the third category of our work is benchmark and data analytics. We often need to do benchmark to give hardware purchase decision some help, and per user request, we have to do that. The requirement for the benchmark is rapid, consistent, and fair evaluation. It needs to be replicable and flexible for different usage and users. In the past, we do this manually, and it's not easy and does not meet all the requirements. But now we have a better solution that is in-house tool called PACE-Proof Bench, which Dr. Liu Cherry will give a talk in the afternoon. The first one in the technical session. And we also have to provide cluster usage data to the team in order to analyze users' behavior and help monitor the system's health and to analyze the software usage trends and etc. Our in-house tool called PaceFact will be helping on this aspect, and it's also covered in Cherry's presentation. And the fifth part of our job is user support. So as Christina talked about, we have almost the similar kind of user support we're facing every day. We just do it in 2 venues, ticketing system and the virtual bi-weekly consulting session. We also help users to optimize their code, their workflow. We support different departments on their specific problems. The last one, but it's also a very important one, we also do user training. PACE offer orientation, Linux, Python, performance optimization, machine learning, Git version control trainings. In the past, we also offer big data like Spark and Hadoop and how to build software, those kind of training to users. The trainings are monthly and up to 80 users per session. For example, in the summer 2020, we will have 36 sessions in total, including the exceed trainings that we help broadcast. So by training, we not only lower the technical barriers for users to use the resources, reduce the ticket number, but we foster more collaborations through the training. We engage our users through the training. For example, in my machine learning training, there are always more than 120 registrations for each session. And after that, faculty members will talk with me about their ideas in writing grant proposal using machine learning methods. Another example is the business school of Georgia Tech provided 20% of my salary just to give their students training in machine learning. And we co-developed a series of 18-hour workshops on machine learning series of training for the quantitative and computational finance program. And we also find the publication opportunities and other funding opportunities after the training. So it's a way to broaden our impact and to broaden the landscape of research software engineer. This is a brief summary of our work in PACE. In general, depending on the source of the fundings, our job responsibility is different. Because we are within the IT department with hard money, we don't have the flexibility to go deep dive into projects. And we have to support everybody equally. Besides this, in our daily job, we also help talented students to work with us as student workers to help them be prepared for their future career. We also share some common dreams like Christina talked about for the RSEs. We also have challenges and thoughts in the recruitment and organization of our department. Hopefully we can share more with you in the discussion and in the panel or tomorrow. Thank you. Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Nellie. Now we move on to our panel discussion and our four speakers. If you have questions for any or all of the speakers, please type them into the chat box. And as you're doing that, I will start out with a question of mine about, Christina touched on something in her talk about gathering the metrics to make the case for building up the RSE group. I'd like to ask the other three panelists, how has your success been at making the case to your institutions for building an RSE group? Is it, are they fairly receptive? Is it a bit of a struggle? How does that work for you all?
So I'm happy to answer that about something I didn't talk about. So from Princeton's perspective, we've had a lot of success recently with basically faculty telling stories of their success. So they will get up and say, look, we couldn't have done this. See this Nature paper we just published? We couldn't have done this without the RSE on this project. And a few of those stories is really all it takes for everyone to say, I want one. Me, how do I get one? So I know that that's kind of a difficult thing. It's like a chicken and the egg. You want those stories, but you need the RSEs to have kind of deep dives into those projects to get those. We were lucky enough to have some institutional support to start with, and it snowballed from there.
I will say it can be a little awkward maybe, but most faculty are more than happy if you had a good interaction with you, even if it was small, even if it wasn't a whole project that was a Nature publication, to, you know, ask them to make sure they do spread the message, tell their dean that they had, you know, a good experience, write an email, they're usually happy to do that. And it really does have an outsized effect in my experience as well, in terms of getting the administration's attention on the service and the need for more resources.
Would either of our other two panelists like to add anything to that? Okay, well, if not, I'll move on to our next question that's come from the chat. Given that many institutions have scattered RSEs, that they have no RSE group or manager or anything like that, how can we as a community create opportunities for learning and working together on projects?
So I can add a comment on that. So we are trying to build like an internal group, trying to collect all the software developers at Harvard. For example, for research computing, we have Slack channels that people working in different research computing departments, they are on the channel and they can discuss idea and they can talk. But it's kind of hard, especially for schools that are mostly decentralized, like Harvard, working on different projects. I think they can contribute on a Slack or maybe working on in GitHub, share codes on GitHub. Yeah.
So I will say that from a US-RSE perspective, I mean, I think this is exactly one of the things that we want to try to do. How we get there, I think we haven't figured that out yet, but connecting people doing similar type work is a major goal of this organization. So perhaps it's having technical talks like this session where it spawns into a Slack channel where that particular topic's discussed and we share, right? I mean, or it's local meetups, or it's some conduit by which you can find other people doing work, whether it's at your institution or not.
Yeah. I think I would just jump in and add there's sometimes a terminology confusion in that the talks we've heard so far have mostly been about like formal organization, formal RSE groups that sit on the org chart of their institution. There's also the possibility of having something that's less formal to, as our panelists were saying, gather RSEs, either whether a Slack channel or a brown bag lunch series or something along that order. I think that can be very much community driven and doesn't have to come down from the top in the same way a formal organization would. Do any other of our panelists have something to add?
I had a question about that.
Yes, go ahead.
So you mentioned that, yeah, there's a bunch of formal organizations that people were talking about, and one of the topics was how to hire new people. I guess I'm curious about the funding structure of the formal RSE organizations. So is it funded by the institution, or is it funded by projects, or how does that work? Like if you want to hire a new person, do you have to get projects to chip in to pay for that person, or does the institution hire them and then you charge projects, or what?
I can talk about what we do. So we are all just full-time staff. We're IT staff, so we're paid centrally by the university. And then when we do get grant-funded projects, that it sort of helps supplement the money goes to IT essentially, right, and helps pay for part of our salaries. So it doesn't have a direct benefit for us, other than if we can sustain a certain level of grant funding over time, it's easier to say, hey, look, we have 3 full-time staff, but we've recovered, 1 salary worth of money. And so give us another person. Basically, we'll be able to pay that person in the future if you, cover some of the overhead on that person. So it's one of the reasons that even though we are funded, we've been pursuing some grant funded projects so that it's an avenue to bring new people into the group in the future. We've also been talking to researchers when they do have enough funding to hire somebody individually to see if they want to have that person be situated in our group so that they have colleagues. And so then the proposition there is, instead of buying one physical individual for a year on a project, how about you buy one FTE equivalent, and then you get multiple people who have different skill sets and can work more effectively together, and you aren't just isolating a single RSE in your lab. So we haven't hired somebody under that model yet. Besides the current financial things that are going on in the world, we had some issues at our university that we were dealing with. So it is a model that I think will work though, and we're hoping to do. Is that what you were getting at in terms of the funding?
Yeah, and I guess, well, so I guess the other thing that stuck out to me from what you were saying is that you have, you know, maybe 3 staff and maybe you recover 1 staff worth from grant funding. So, I mean, does that mean that the projects are really getting more than they paid for? Because it sounds like it. And is that something that you emphasize?
Yeah, so some of them are getting more than they paid for. So I definitely, one of like the projects that I personally am working on, it was a small grant. We put in the maximum amount. We have some dollar amount in for me, but I blew through that, you know, months ago, basically, on the project. And so there was an understanding and a commitment by IT that we were going to support more of that project. And so we do try and highlight that. And that's what we haven't really found the right mix of impact measurements. So I think there's something to be said for like just total hours we put into a project, hours that we're saving researchers on projects. Haven't quite figured out how to capture it. And again, I don't think publications are important, but they're not necessarily the best thing because they are just very delayed, right? It takes a long time to see them happen. So I'm open. Yeah, if other people have good ideas of impact measurements, I'd love to hear them. Like Ian said, the stories though have been the most effective for us in terms of getting attention to the group. And this idea of hours saved, pulled from Exceed's Extended Collaborative Support Services. I think they ask some kind of question to that effect when they survey people after they support them. And I think it's a good idea, at least something I want to try and capture.
I want to jump in too and say, I think this is a really important question. Kind of how do you fund these models? I saw Dan pasted in the chat that they wrote a paper about 4 different organizations and how they support them. But this is something that I think the community, we need to find a way to answer this, provide answers on demand, because this is not the first time someone has asked this question, and it won't be the last. And providing kind of a reference manual for here's how you make the case for more RSEs is how we're going to make the career as a career path better for everyone involved. You know, I certainly I don't like to hear when people are on soft money and it's a term position and they're not sure what's going to happen next. I mean, I don't think that's something we want long term, but that requires a lot of work from the managers and administrators to find a way to make this work, and success stories from various institutions, and everybody's a bit different. So, you know, finding one that kind of fits your particular model, I think could be really valuable.
So as Ian mentioned, each school has a different story. So during last year, UK-RSE, I met with 5 different RSE leaders, and almost everyone had a different story. Some were part of CS department, some were part of IT department, some part of research computing, like a school, different schools. And they had, some of them, they were helping teaching technologies to get funding to support RSE staff. Some of them had like UK-RSE fellow to support RSE FTEs. So every university is different, and I don't think there is any unified solution to that.
Okay, we've got several questions on the chat, and I'll try to get to all of them, but let me start with one that directly follows on to that question, which is, can we build a library of use cases, experiences, success stories?
I think that's a great idea. Yep. I think that's an achievable short-term goal that we should try for. Little stories will help. Anything. I think so. If there are people who this would either be useful for, or who could say this is what I would need, or people who maybe have those, let's try to spin off something and get started on that. I think that would be a great thing to do.
Or if you don't have bandwidth to write it down, you could be in RSE Stories and get it all done in 40 minutes. I'll do the editing.
All right, thank you, Vanessa. Let's see. Let's see. So let me move on to another question that is from the chat. It says, discussion, successful recruitment and retention strategies. What are the challenges? What are the incentives?
Okay, I'll start to share my experience. For us, Georgia Tech PACE, recruitment is always not easy for us. We're located in the center of Atlanta in the Tech Square. So we are surrounded by industries. So it's very hard for us. What we do is first through our professional tools, we know people and we find good candidates, and we figure out besides the salary. For example, we offer flexible work environment. On our team, we have one, Dr. Kevin Melano, he's 100% remote, and Chris Stone, he is about 80% remote. So we offer this flexibility to people to help the talented people to join us. And another thing is that we try hard to negotiate with each HR to have the better salary for our employees. And also because of the university offers a very good environment, like the stable work of our job position, especially in this situation, the stable of job becomes very important. We have other benefits in Georgia Tech. We can we kind of have the flexibility to design our own product and own the product and make impact to the society and to the research. So all those factors that will help us in the recruiting. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I will second the relationship with HR. Building that and keeping that is important. I think actually I mean, university salaries are going to be lower, but having our positions within IT has helped to some extent. They're a little bit higher than they would be otherwise if the positions were hired, I think, just directly under a school or under a department. So it helps a little bit. We do the same selling points as I think others do about attracting people to universities of stability and good work-life balance. I just like to emphasize the learning aspect of it. So we put a lot of resources and time into letting people learn new skills and develop new skills. I also don't necessarily expect to keep people forever, especially in entry-level positions. I'm perfectly happy to have somebody come and develop over a couple years and then move on to what else they might want to do in their life, whether that's take a leadership position in a group at another university that there just isn't space for at ours, or go off into industry. I mean, I do hope they stay for a couple years. I had somebody great who left after 1 year, was lured off to California with a very high salary and to manage a group, and there just isn't anything that we can really do to compete with that. But I'm also always looking for people ahead of time. So like I said, I hired one of my students into a full-time position. So that was great. Sort of keep other contacts with people that I would love to bring into the group if there are positions that open up. It can be hard because often that is somebody who isn't in the Chicago area and would have to move, but that's kind of the reality with a lot of jobs.
Yeah, our director has helped a lot, like our title is research scientist. Purely in the IT department, we don't have the research scientist title, but with that, we can have a higher range of salary. And also, I like Christina's comments on building this relationship from internally. Two of our team members, Chris and Kevin, they're Georgia Tech alumni. So they worked with us before, they were paid before, and then they joined us.
Okay. I have another question from the chat that is related to that question, which is, how do you identify the best job candidates? Does the interview involve a whiteboard problem solving session? Do you use a pre-interview coding challenge?
Us, we don't do the white. We have the first round is resume check over the phone. We will ask as many technical questions as we want. And second round is online. So we do online interview. Basically, it's also the technical questions that are related to the person's personal experience and the job responsibility. And the third round is on-campus interview. We will invite them to give a talk, like a 1 hour talk, open to the public. And then we will have a roundtable interview, maybe invite 6 people and talking about, we have a standard HR defined questionnaire. We have to use that, it's behavior. And then at the end, we make a decision. Thirdly, we will invite the candidates to the campus choice so that they get to know the environment and get to know us better. We don't want them to make a hassle decision or not what the environment look like. We really want to present daily life, what is the real look of the research software engineering in our team, so that hopefully they can make the best decision for themselves. And after that, we go through negotiation. We will do our best to help them negotiate with HR.
You also do whiteboard interviews only for interns, just to give them an opportunity to get ready for their future interviews. For professional developers, we discuss their past projects, go in detail, and it can tell a lot of detail about their skills. So we don't do any formal coding interview.
So yeah, so do we.
At Princeton, we do phone screen, ask for a code sample. So send them something that they've worked on with link to a GitHub repository. But then in the in-person, we do a whiteboard. We are fairly heavy on the software development side rather than the user support. So that's a skill set that we've decided we need to do. And recently, we've actually been doing them remotely since this. We've been helping hire into another position. And that might be something we explore in the future of doing it with CoShare.io or something like that.
We go pretty heavy on behavioral interview questions for most of the interview. And so, yeah, to get to the technical thing, it's varied over time and it's varied by position that we've hired. So I've had take-home code challenges for folks to do when they couldn't really provide examples of the work that was good enough for us to know where their skill set stood, but people have projects and code that they can share. I'm happy to look at that instead of having them do something new. For positions that require sort of teaching or outward or researcher focused interactions, then we often will include a presentation as part of we usually have like a 1-day on campus interview for our finalists. And so an hour of that is usually, some presentation and then questions that the people take. I don't like whiteboards. I would not do whiteboards. I don't know what I would learn from the person, from that personally.
All right, let me shift and ask a different question now. Again, from the chat board. All the discussion so far has been about RSEs in essentially a support role. What about a model where the work of an RSE is integral to the research and the RSE is a co-researcher? Is anyone working that way?
Yes. In one of the projects that we are working with Center for Brain Science, we are working with researchers to develop a spike sorting algorithm that requires researching different models. That includes mathematical models, includes statistical models, and building the scientific package. And at the end, it will be published as a paper. But that also depends on the domain-specific knowledge that we have in the team. Yeah.
So go ahead, Nellie, please go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I have done that in my previous employment university. So I worked with researchers on specific questions and doing the research on the cybersecurity part. It's the intrusion detection system, how to scale it up, solve the security challenges. And it's a 3-year project, and I served on as co-PI for 2 NSF projects for that field, and also published papers with that faculty member, which is besides my work supporting the general users, which I think requires a lot of extra time, effort, and contribution. So because of the security part, it's related to the IT very much. It's the intrusion detection system, and it's on top of the science CMZ. So I think a combination of individual research and the IT infrastructure, I think it's worth doing, though that do require a lot of effort. Go ahead, Ian.
So I maybe if we can do this again, I can show in a bit more detail how the Princeton model works. But we are in research computing in the central IT. However, we have other groups who handle the support, and so we're very much embedded in the research, 1 to 3 projects for months, if not years, where we really are acting as co-researchers, owning the software side of things, but heavily involved in the research process, co-authors on papers, even co-PIs occasionally on certain projects. And it really, we view this as the opportunity, and this is just the fortunate situation that we're in, of trying to have really significant impact on a few projects rather than a broad impact on many. We have other groups that can do that. So we very much are in the co-research thing, and that's just the fortunate by how we're funded and kind of our institutional support that we have.
It's also the same in our group. We have different teams doing user support. So as in Georgia Tech, it was mostly user support. I think there is a boundary between RSE and research computing, supporting users. So in our team, when we say RSE, we do development, and that could be like a small package development or like a long-term engagement, which can result in a publication.
Okay, next question. Is there any support or training for faculty to learn and or teach or involve students in research software engineering?
I don't know about centralized resources, but some of the engagements we have had, we've definitely offered to serve as sort of mentors for students that are on a project. So when we can't take on a long-term project, but the faculty member has a student who can work on it, we sort of do recurring consultations with them, you know, offer to check in every few weeks or sit down when they get to the point where they need extra help. But no, I don't know if there's others on the call who know of good training resources for this. I mean, we have our general workshops, but they're not really, I don't think, what you're asking about.
We have a central training portal that every department can go and add courses and students can register. So research computing also can post the trainings and the students can log in with their Harvard email and register for those courses. And they are visible to everyone. And they can be recorded and made available to people.
Well, we're developing Git version control software engineering course for the researchers. For software development, we don't have like a formal course for the researchers. So but I do have supported the faculty members who need to set up database or who need to do software engineering work. I just redirect them to the IT department that handles such kind of request. And we are developing more courses trying to help them in terms of the software engineering part. We are using Canvas right now. We're exploring Canvas now. Hopefully that can be a central place for us to host all the software engineering related courses. And software carpentry, I think the data carpentry, and people are talking about HPC carpentry, they all offer such courses that the faculty members can benefit from.
Okay, somebody has asked a follow-on question to that. Is this question regarding a 4-credit course in research software engineering? And that could be one possible answer. Do you panelists do any of that? Or are you aware of anything like that going on?
Ian, you want to talk about your course? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Christina, go ahead.
I don't have one, but I feel like Ian's at Princeton, they have some sort of workshop or mini course that they support.
We have a few things. So, and it's not just us. This is a pretty broad collaboration of many people. We have a series, multiple mini courses, workshops, whatever you want to call them, ranging from 1 hour to kind of 2-day workshops on various pieces. But we also have a 4-credit graduate level course that is scientific software engineering for scientific computing, I believe is the title of it. And so it's pretty heavy on scientific computing aspects, but it's one of the few that I know of that exist. It's the most popular grad class on campus.
And I think Dan put in the chat, but they did, they being software sustainability something, I never get the name right, I'm sorry, Dan, and others, they did a winter institute, I think in December for the first time, where they brought students together and trained them in some skills. Is that right?
Yes, in the winter.
Yeah,
Yes,
sorry.
Go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, I just put that in the chat. It was a trial for a summer school, but we did it in the winter because that was when it was convenient. So hopefully it would happen again in the summers.
And it turned out to be a good time because now we wouldn't have it in person. So.
What I know in Georgia Tech is several departments and also PACE are collaborating on a course that is offering the HPC part at the credit course. It could happen next year or the year after this. And also the faculty members who are having the NSF project, they want to broaden the impact, so they will have the summer camp, maybe give the student a few credits, and they invited us to teach in their summer camp. That's another way. And I heard that in Clemson University, where I used to work for, they have the NSF NRT program, which is basically to give the PhD students, master student, a basic research training, which are the credit courses, incorporate the HPC trainings or the scientific software deployment or development skills in that.
Okay, well, thank you all. We are coming to the end of our time slot, so I would like to very much thank all of our panelists and everyone who added questions for the panelists. I think it's been a great discussion, and I look forward to maybe hearing some more of it in the breakout sessions tomorrow. In the meantime, we will take a break for now, and our next session, our technical talk session, will start at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And in the meantime, thank you all, and we'll see you then.